When I found a post tucked away in the dark corners of the internet, my interest was piqued. It was titled, "Killers Anonymous." At first, I thought it was a joke made to scare or morbidly amuse people. But I was wrong. It was a support group created for people like me. When I was about 18, I began to loathe life, and I couldn't stand seeing my peers enjoying theirs. I would spend hours alone, but it grew into days of no contact. The drugs and alcohol I had been using started flooding my mind with unsavory things. I started fantasizing about death, and I imagined becoming the one who dishes it out. I would relish in thinning about the high I could achieve through such an act, a high that no drug could provide me, a high that I would never come down from. I knew it was wrong to think that way, but I couldn't help but take pleasure from it. After thoroughly reading the post, I was hesitant to apply. What if this were some new way for law enforcement to collect information on potentially dangerous people? I thought. I applied, regardless. And after about a week, I finally received the confirmation email. The email contained almost all of the same information as the post. I scrolled down to the bottom, which contained their meeting schedule. Next Friday, I said. After I had passed the idea around in my head for several days, I decided to go. I was still nervous, but also excited. I was finally going to get the chance to speak about these urges and not have someone shame me for them. At least I hoped I wouldn't be. I had never told anyone about them before. But could you blame me? This isn't exactly a problem everyone struggles with. Friday came quickly, and as I stood outside the house I was told to meet at, anxiety began to build. Once again, what if all this was a setup, I thought. I swallowed my fears and made my way to the front door. I gave a few firm knocks, and a woman opened and greeted me. She was a cute brunette, and she looked to be in her late 20s. "Oh, hello. Are you here for the group?" she said with a cheerfulness about her. Yes, I am," I said, as I reached out to shake her hand. "Good to meet you," she said while returning my gesture. "Please come in and make yourself at home. We will be starting soon. But first, which group are you in?" I paused and was confused by her question. "I thought it was just the one group," I asked. "Oh no, there are actually 4 groups," she said. "One group wouldn't be big enough. You would be surprised by how many people we get. Group 4 has fewer people if you would like to start with a smaller group." "I'll be in group 4 then," I said before walking inside. Greeting me were 2 large living rooms to the right and left. Each room had chairs placed in a circular pattern. There was also a staircase leading into what looked like another large space. "Your group is in the left room," the woman explained. "You made the right choice coming here, and I hope we can help." "Thank you," I said before taking my seat. After about 30 minutes of waiting, both of the bottom rooms now looked full of people. An older man in our circle, probably about 60, stood from his chair and introduced himself. "Hello everyone, my name is Troy, and I'll be mediating tonight. I would like to start by saying how proud I am that you're all here tonight. I know all of you are probably nervous and hesitant, but I want you all to know you're safe here. Now, I see that we have some new faces here tonight. Would anyone like to introduce themselves?" After a few seconds of silence, another man in the group broke the tension. "I would," he said. "My name is Mike." "Nice to meet you, Mike," Troy responded. "Would you like to tell the group a bit about yourself and maybe why you're here?" Sure," Mike said with an unsure tone. "I was just a young boy when it started. It was small, with just some thoughts, images, and fantasies. But after a few years, I started to experiment with dissecting animals, mostly small ones like birds, rodents, and the occasional cat. Taking away the lives of animals brought a sense of comfort. I would strangle, stab, drown, electrocute, and then dismember them to finish. I felt in complete control, and my mind would become free and clear again. but the older I got and the harder life got, I needed to do it more and more often. Recently, it hasn't been helping at all. Mike went silent before Troy responded. "That was very brave of you, son. Not a lot of people can open up about their thoughts and actions like that." Mike's story fascinated me. I too had considered killing animals for pleasure, but I didn't think it would provide enough satisfaction to satiate me. Besides, I actually liked and respected animals. It was people I had a vendetta against. Troy turned his gaze towards me. "How about you, son? Would you feel comfortable introducing yourself to the group?" I nodded in agreement and told them about my disgust for people, about how I hated my own life, and explained my feelings towards how others enjoyed theirs. After I was done, I scanned the room. Everyone looked visibly uncomfortable with what I was saying. I took a deep breath before finishing. But now I'm here, and looking for help. Troy stood again. "Thank you, Eli," he said before giving me the same comforting message that he gave Mike. After Troy sat back down, another woman raised her hand before saying she wanted to go next. She told the group about how she hated her parents and wanted to kill them. After she explained herself, she broke down in tears. Troy began to comfort her before calling the meeting to a close. After the group stood and exchanged pleasantries, I made my way over to Mike, who was standing on the porch. "Hey, it's Mike, right?" I said while tapping him on the shoulder. "Yeah, what's up?" he asked. "I don't have a whole lot of people who I can talk to about these sort of things, so I was wondering if you would like to get some lunch," I asked. Sure, why not?" he said with a sign of hesitation. "Great. How does Jen's Diner sound?" "Sounds good," he said before giving a slight smile. After a few-mile drive, I pulled into the diner parking lot. Mike pulled in right after. We walked inside and were approached by an attractive young waitress. "How many?" she asked. "2, I answered. "And can we get a booth?" "Sure can, right this way." She guided us to our booth before asking, "So what can I start you two off with to drink?" "I'll take a water," said Mike. "Sure thing, and you, sir?" I looked deep into her eyes. She looked so sweet and innocent. "I'll have the same," I said with a smile. "Okay, I'll have those waters out to y'all shortly," she said before walking off. "So, Eli, what made you want to join the, well, you know." "The group?" Mike asked, while seeming a bit fidgety. "I guess I finally felt like it was time to get some help. Though, I don't remember you ever saying what you wanted out of the group," I asked. "Well, I guess you could say I want help, but I also kinda don't," Mike said while looking down and avoiding eye contact. "Same," I said with a chuckle. "I want help, but I still really want to try it at least once." His eyes looked up with a glimpse of curiosity in his eyes. "You know I was," Mike said before being cut off. "Here are those waters," said the waitress. "Are y'all ready, or do you need a few more minutes?" I looked at Mike and gestured to confirm before responding. "Yeah, we're ready. I'll take the clubhouse sandwich and chips." "Alrighty, and what will you have?" she said while looking at Mike. "I'll have the working man's burger with fries and no mayo, please," Mike said, while looking more comfortable and open. "Sure thing. I'll be back with y'all's orders as soon as it's ready," she said before, once again, heading back to the kitchen. "Back to what I was saying," Mike said after taking a sip of water. "I had an idea. What if just once we follow through with our urges? You know, just to see if we truly have it in us or not." I felt it was a great idea before saying, "I don't know, are you sure that's something you want to do?" "Yes," he said with confidence. "I've been sure for a long time." When he said that, I could hear the seriousness in his tone. I reached out my hand to meet his. It felt like two partners agreeing on a business deal. After a few minutes went by, the waitress returned with our food. "Here you are, 1 clubhouse sandwich with chips and 1 working man's burger with fries with no mayo. Enjoy." We both thanked her before returning to our conversation. "So, do you have anyone in mind?" I said. I saw him peer over my shoulder to the kitchen window. He looked like a hungry predator who had just caught sight of a plump hog. "How about her?" he said. "I think she would work." I turned to look back while having a good idea who he was referring to. It was at our gorgeous waitress. "Don't you think she would be a bit risky? Especially since she looks young and is probably known by a lot of customers? Wouldn't people notice if she went missing?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "But there isn't anyone going to suspect us. We're nobodies to her with no connections." "Okay, we'll do it," I said, hoping he was right. A few more minutes went by, and we finished our meals. The waitress came and gave us our bills. "Here you both are. Will you be needing anything else?" she asked. "No," Mike responded. "I think we're good." As the waitress walked back to the kitchen, Mike was eyeballing her up and down. We made our way back to our vehicles. "Meet me here tomorrow and we can start planning," Mike said. "Got it," I agreed before shaking his hand once more. I sat in my car while I watched Mike drive off in his truck. Soon after, I headed back home. I lived in a little apartment located in a more run-down part of town. It was all I could barely afford while working as a bookkeeper for a small local shop. Later that night, while lying in bed and staring up at the ceiling, the feeling of losing control, which I was all too familiar with, had returned to me. I thought long and hard trying to cling to the idea Mike and I had. I was hoping to be comforted by it, and it soon proved I was right. The next day, I met up with Mike at the diner at around 7 o'clock in the evening, just as we had planned. We had parked in the abandoned parking garage across the street to help get a better view. I got out of my car to hop into Mike's older pickup truck. "There she is," Mike said while looking through a pair of binoculars. "Hello, gorgeous." "So, what's the plan here, Mike?" I asked him. "I think we should just follow her home to start, see if she lives with other people or not," he responded. After about 2 hours went by, the diner looked to be closing for the night. We sat a while longer and waited for the waitress to come out. About 30 minutes later, we saw her getting into her car. Mike started the engine, and we made our way to the garage exit. We followed her for what felt like 30 minutes out of town. She led us out into the country, which wasn't a shock since we lived in a small rural town in Georgia. She pulled off onto a dirt road. We followed a bit longer before she pulled into what looked like a driveway. We crept up in front of her home with our headlights off. Mike pulled out his binoculars again. "Should we just do it now?" I asked. "No," he answered sternly. "We don't even know if she lives alone or not yet. Besides, I want to take her back to my place. I live in a nice, quiet, and deserted place like this." "Your place?" I asked him. "Yeah, my place. If I'm gonna do this, I want to do it right," he said, sounding like a tradesman talking about his craft. "Okay," I said, not wanting to upset him. He didn't respond, and instead just kept watching her. She pulled out her keys, unlocked the front door, and went inside. "Huh," she turned on the porch light. "Maybe she's giving us the go-ahead to come on in," Mike said while chuckling. I laughed with him before he pressed on the gas pedal. After we hit paved road again, he asked me, "You want to come over to my place? I'll show you what I got prepped." Curious, I answered, "Sure, why not?" "Great," he said, sounding excited. "I think you'll love it, and I think it'll help give you more confidence in our plan." He drove us back to his place, and he was right. It was in the middle of nowhere, a small mobile home on a piece of land that had a big barn in the back. We got out and walked around back to the barn. "This is it," he said, sounding proud. "This is where we're gonna do it." It looked old while littered with cobwebs and hay. The left wall when walking through the entrance was covered in saws, hatchets, machetes, rakes, and even had a cleaver. It looked like a scene pulled right out of a slasher film. The right wall had metal rings with what looked like chains and cuffs looped through them. They were lined up in a row leading all the way to the back, and it looked like a dungeon. Lastly, in the center, was a large rectangular concrete slab, which looked to be about 4 feet high, 7 feet in length, and another 4 feet in width. It, too, had metal loops drilled into it, and I could see leather straps lying on top. "Wow, this is pretty impressive, Mike. Are you sure you haven't done this before?" I asked while laughing. "No," he said while grinning and laughing, "but I've been planning and thinking about it for years. I just haven't had the gumption to finally commit to it. But now, thanks to you, I do." "Well, after getting a good look at this place, I think everything is gonna go great," I said. "Hey, do you want to come in for a beer?" he asked. "Sure, why not?" I said after checking my watch. "It's only midnight. I'll have one before we head back to my car." We stepped back out through the large barn doors, and Mike locked them back before making our way to his mobile home. We walked inside with Mike leading the way, and I could hear Mike fumbling around while trying to find the light switch. Finally, the lights came on, and Mike went to the kitchen to fetch us a couple of beers. "So, do you live alone here, or do your folks live here too?" I asked. "I got this place all to myself. My parents passed a few years back, and since I'm an only child, it all got left to me," he said before handing me a beer. "What happened to them?" I asked, hoping not to upset him. "Died right in there," Mike said while pointing to what looked like a master bedroom. "I woke one day and found them still in bed, cold to the touch and not moving. You know I buried them out back. Mama always hated the idea of being buried in a place full of strangers, so figured home would be more comfortable for her." "And what about your dad? Is he buried here too?" I asked, very curious to know more. "Technically," Mike said before letting out a loud laugh, "as long as you consider being turned into pig shit being buried, even that is probably too good for him." Not wanting to push the subject further, I kept silent and nodded. We continued talking for a bit longer while we finished our beers. As I stood up from his couch ready to head back, I started feeling nauseous and could barely hold my footing. "Can't handle one beer?" he said before I finally stumbled to the floor. "Ice water," I said, while trying to hold back vomit. Mike nodded before bringing me a glass. I poured some on my face, but it didn't help. I was in and out of consciousness for many hours, but I do remember feeling rocks and sticks rubbing against my back, like I was being dragged. Next, I could hear chains rattling, and soon after, metal cuffs clamped shut around my wrists. I felt the metal dig tightly into my skin. After that, I didn't come to until a stinging beam of sunlight pierced my eyelids from a hole in the barn wall. I looked around, still feeling the lingering effects from whatever was in my drink. It was hot and humid, and my clothes were drenched in sweat. My hands were numb from being in the cuffs for so long. Mike was nowhere in sight, and I couldn't hear much of anything outside. I tried wiggling the chains loose, but I had no luck. As the day went by and the lingering effects went away, so did the sunlight. The sun was setting, and the barn was soon plunged into darkness. Headlights shot through cracks in the walls and lit up the barn. Soon after, I heard the sound of crunching pine straw coming towards the barn. The sound of the barn doors opening sent chills up my spine. I started hyperventilating, and my stomach turned from the thought of what he was going to do to me. "Breathe, Eli," said Mike after turning on the bright overhead lights. "I haven't even started yet." Why are you doing this?" "I thought we were a team," I said after catching my breath. "No, Eli, we weren't a team. I do like you though, so I'm sorry I have to do this. If I had the strength to not give in to my temptations, I would," he said in a dead monotone voice that I had yet heard from him. "What are you going to do to me?" I asked while trying to control my breath. "Eli, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not going to be good for you. I have temptations and compulsions that go beyond just killing," he said before filling a syringe. My stomach and chest burned with fear, and I feel my body wanting to convulse. He walked over to me before sticking me in the arm with the needle. I was begging him to stop, but he just told me to hush. It didn't take long for the effects to take hold, and I was out like a light again. After I returned to what I assumed was going to be a brief time back in the land of the living, I found myself lying on the concrete slab. My legs, arms, torso, and neck had leather straps tethering me to it. After many hours of being restricted from using the restroom, I could smell my soiled clothes. I felt like an animal locked in a pen and ready for the slaughter. As I laid there, marinating in my own waste, I could hear whistling approaching the barn. Once again, the loud noise from the barn doors opening filled the air. "Good Lord, man, it smells like piss and shit in here," he said while chuckling. "Perhaps I should have put you in some diapers." I didn't say anything in response. I didn't have anything left to say to Mike that wasn't already said. He then grabbed the cleaver that was hanging on the wall before walking over to me. He rubbed my legs down with what smelled like alcohol. After he had wiped down my legs, he grabbed my left leg to hold it still, and then raised his right arm holding the cleaver. He looked like a butcher ready to get to work. His arm swung down in full force, and I heard the bones in my leg crunch. A sharp pain rang loud through my leg. With every swing, I hear crunch after crunch. I could hear my flesh tearing and my blood gushing out. I started to black out from the pain. "No, no, no," Mike yelled after splashing ice-cold water in my face. "We're not done yet." I looked down at my body, and I could see my leg. It was sitting in a gray bucket that had been set between my legs. I threw up from the gruesome sight. Mike wiped my blood from his hands and face with a cloth before grabbing my right leg. "Almost done, Eli," he said, before hacking away again. I saw my blood splash across his face once more. The pain was too severe for me to stay conscious. The next thing I remember was ice-cold water soaking my face, and once again, bringing me back. "All done for now," he said, while patting my face. "You sewed up real nice, Eli." I looked back down to see that the bucket was gone, but so were both of my legs. I had stitches all over the nubs where my legs once were. Everything from just below my knees was gone. "Come on, let's get you chained back up," Mike said while undoing the arm straps. "No needles this time?" I asked him sarcastically. "Planning on running away?" he asked while returning the same sarcastic tone before letting out a sickening laugh. He then picked me up and tossed me over his shoulder. As he was walking me back over to the chains, I saw that he had an old pocket knife tucked in his back pocket. I reached for it, and luckily my arms were just long enough. I managed to grab it and drive it into the back of Mike's neck. I fell and hit the ground hard after Mike dropped me. He stumbled for a second before finally hitting the ground as well. His clothes were soaked in blood, and I couldn't tell how much was mine or his. Mike leaned up against the concrete slab before showing me his eyes, which were now filled with rage. "Screw you!" he yelled in between, spitting up blood. Eventually, his words became nothing more than bloody gurgling, and then his body went limp. I crawled to the barn doors and was barely able to get one of them open. I managed to make it to the mobile home before finding my cell phone in his nightstand. I called the police and told them the address, which I found off a piece of mail sitting on the coffee table. I sat on the floor in his room until the police finally busted down the front door. 2 officers rushed in and lifted me up before carrying me outside. 2 paramedics met them, and they took care of me from there. The whole ride in the back of the ambulance, all I could think about was what would happen if Mike had some evidence of what we were planning together. After they got me to the hospital, they cleaned my wounds and redid the stitches. A few hours went by, and an officer walked into my room. "How are you doing, son?" the officer asked. "I could be better," I said before letting out a groan from the pain. "I'm sorry for asking. Anyway, I'm Detective Harrington," he responded, "and I wanted to ask you about the man who did this while your memory is still fresh." I was reluctant, but I knew he was probably right. "Sure, what do you need to know?" "Do you remember what happened when he abducted you?" It was while I was walking out to my car a few days ago. I lied, hoping he would buy it. "And do you remember where this happened?" he asked. "No," I lied again. "I don't remember much of what happened before waking up in the barn. He stuck me in the neck with something and I was out." "Okay. And did the perpetrator ever mention anything about his parents? Or maybe a woman by the name of Emily?" Detective Harrington asked. "He told me they died a few years back, but not much else. And I don't know an Emily." "Who is she?" I asked. He scratched his beard and finished writing in his notes before saying, "We think she was who he was targeting next. She's just some waitress at a local diner, but you don't need to worry about those details." "You sure?" "I'm positive, son. You just get some rest. We can continue after you get a little better," he said before stepping back out. After a few days in the hospital, the doctors saw me fit to go home, and I was wheeled out to my father's car. He thanked the nurse for wheeling me out before he loaded me into his car. On the way home, he tried talking to me and asked me questions about what had happened, but I didn't answer. I stared out the window, not saying a word. After he figured out I wasn't up for talking, we finished the ride in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, he helped me inside and laid me down in the guest bedroom. While lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, not blinking or uttering a word. I could feel pain in my legs that weren't there. I hated the bastard for what he did to me. I felt betrayed by someone who I thought was becoming my friend, by someone just like me. I guess it's for the best, though. Now, nobody has to worry about what I could do anymore. The basement had been sealed shut for decades. A thick wooden door bolted and nailed, left untouched since I was a child. My parents wouldn't talk about it. When I asked, my father's face would go pale, and my mother's hands would tremble. I remember it all happening around the time my sister, Olivia, went missing. She was in the house, playing with me, laughing. Then she said she was going to grab a soda. Next thing we knew, she was gone. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle. The police searched for nearly a year. They even tried to arrest my parents, but their lawyer was ruthless, and there was no evidence. My parents never mentioned Olivia again, but I remembered. I remembered the crying at night, the bitter arguments behind closed doors, the way they'd scream anytime I wandered too close to the basement. And I remembered watching my father, pale and sweating, as he hammered the last nails into the basement door. As a kid, I was confused more than anything. One day, I had a sister, my best friend, my partner in every game, and then she was just gone. At first, I thought it was a mistake, that she'd come back any minute, soda in hand, laughing like nothing happened. But days turned into weeks, and the house changed. My parents changed. The warmth drained from everything. They stopped looking at me the same way, like I was fragile. I started to blame myself. Maybe I should have followed her. Maybe I should have stopped her. That guilt grew with me, twisting around my brain. And the basement door became this strange, quiet threat at the heart of our home. Always there, always sealed, always watching. I moved back into the house after my parents passed. A beautiful place to live, if you ignore the history. It has an eerie, timeless quality to it, as if it had been frozen in place, waiting for my return. It sat nestled at the edge of a wooded neighborhood. The trees grow thick and wild, casting shadows over the front lawn even in the middle of the day. Just far enough from the nearest neighbors that if you screamed, no one would hear. The door was still shut when I got there, but I decided to leave it alone and focus more on unpacking. Boxes piled up in the kitchen blocking the door, which only added to my disinterest in opening it. The years of seeing worried glances on my mom and dad's face every time I walked past it ingrained a sort of leave it be mentality. But last week, I had a dream so vivid it reignited my childhood curiosity. In the dream, I was 6 again, sitting on the living room floor with Liv, the sun casting warm streaks of light through the window. She was laughing, her hand sticky from a popsicle. Then she stood up and said she was going to the basement to grab a soda. I told her the basement was sealed, but she just smiled, that same lopsided grin she always had, and walked toward the door like it had never been closed. As she opened it, the air grew thick and cold, and the light in the room dimmed to a dull gray. From the darkness below, something reached up with long, pale fingers and wrapped around her ankle. She didn't scream. She didn't struggle. She just looked back at me with wide, empty eyes and whispered, "It's still down there." I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I didn't know what it meant, but the dream gnawed at me, burrowing into my thoughts. I couldn't shake it. It was like the door had become magnetic, and my body was being pulled to it, every instinct screaming to open it, to know. So I opened it. It took a bit of brute force to get all the nails out and find the key to the deadbolt. I pushed it open, the old door creaking loudly in response. I don't know what I was expecting to be down there. Maybe just an empty, moldy basement filled with old furniture and cobwebs, or maybe some forgotten boxes and broken toys from our childhood. I tried to convince myself it'd be good closure, that I was doing this for Liv. But deep down, under all the rationalizations, there was a feeling I couldn't ignore. Whatever had been sealed away all these years was waiting for me. And the moment the door cracked open, the air shifted, like I had broken a silence that was never meant to end. The stairs groaned beneath my weight as I walked down, each step swallowed by a growing darkness that my flashlight barely pushed back. The air stank of rust and mildew. Broken furniture lay scattered like bones, some pieces shattered, others clawed beyond recognition. Rusted tools hung crookedly on the walls, some bent, others twisted. I scanned the room in hopes of finding something ordinary. Instead, in the far corner, the beam of my light caught movement, a flash of something. It slipped just out of sight behind a support beam, fast, low to the ground. My breath hitched. I didn't see a face, only something white, almost translucent, skin stretched too tightly. My flashlight flickered violently, and in that split second of darkness, I felt it move closer. When the light came back, the corner was empty, but something had been there, something that knew I was watching. Fear took over my body, and I ran up the stairs, slammed the door shut, and relocked the deadbolt. Except, I still felt watched. The feeling clung to me like a second skin, heavy, suffocating. Every room I walked into felt colder than it should. Shadows lingered too long in the corners. I started catching glimpses of movement in the reflections of windows and mirrors, quick flashes, like something ducking just out of sight. At night, I'd hear faint creaks in the floorboards downstairs, slow and deliberate, like something pacing beneath me. The worst part? It wasn't the footsteps. It was the silence between them. A charged, unnatural quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. No matter where I was, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was following me. Things continued like that until last night. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of my bedroom door slowly creaking open. I hadn't even heard the footsteps this time, just that low, painful groan of wood on wood. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to see through the darkness. The hallway beyond the door was pitch black, but I could hear it. Something was standing just beyond the threshold. Something just watching silently and breathing slowly. My bedside lamp wouldn't turn on. The switch clicked uselessly beneath my fingers. The bulb dead and silent. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, but the screen stayed black, completely lifeless, like the battery had been drained dry despite being on the charger. That's when I heard it. A soft scraping. Nails, long and sharp, dragging across the hallway wall just outside my door. The sound was wet somehow, like flesh sliding across plaster. Then it stepped into the room. It was tall. Its limbs stretched far beyond what should have been human, bending at crooked angles, as if the bones had been broken and reset wrong over and over. Its skin was a weird pale color, stretched as if it had been shrink-wrapped to the bone. In the dim moonlight slipping through the window, I saw the outline of its face, or what should have been a face. There were no eyes, just deep, sunken hollows, and a wide, lipless grin carved too high into its cheeks, as though someone had drawn a smile with a knife and pulled it tight with wire. And even though the shadows cloaked most of it, I swear it was smiling right at me. It came at me fast. The thing's limbs twisted as it moved in a spider-like way, jerking into the shadows with unnatural grace. The moment I tried to get up, it was across the room, crashing into me with a cold, crushing weight. Its fingers wrapped around my throat, thin and cold like knives, digging in and cutting. I choked, kicked, struggled. My hand flailed and knocked over the nightstand, the crash of my lamp startling it just long enough for me to slip free and run. I sprinted from the room, and I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I heard it behind me, scrambling, crawling, claws on wood and ceiling. I crashed down the stairs, nearly twisting my ankle. Picking myself back up, I bolted straight for the front door and ran barefoot into the night, bleeding and gasping, the cold air sending a sharp and tingling pain to the cuts on my neck. I couldn't help but wonder if this was what my sister went through, if she'd stood frozen, heart pounding in her chest, staring into the eyes, or the void where eyes should be, of this thing. Had it crept up on her the same way? Silent, patient, savoring the fear before the violence? The thoughts twisted in my gut, making me feel sick. Did it drag her down into that basement? Did she scream? And then the darker questions crept in. Had she been alone in her final moments, or had this thing toyed with her like it was doing with me now? Did it take its time? Or worse, did it keep her? Feed on her terror until there was nothing left of her but memories and silence. But the one question that kept clawing at me was, why didn't it come for the rest of us? If it was capable of this, of death and power, why didn't it finish the job? Why leave my parents and I behind? Why wait all these years, only to crawl out now, just when I opened that door? The possibilities turned my blood cold. I didn't stop running until I reached the road, a car almost hitting me. The driver slammed on the brakes, jumped out, and called the police. But when they got there, the house was fine. No damage, no scratches, no signs of forced entry. Nothing. But I know what I saw. I can't go back. I won't. Whatever I let out last night wasn't meant to be found. And now that it's loose, I don't think it's finished with me. I'm writing this in the hospital right now, and I can still feel it just watching.